Title: The Untouchable Heist, a Global Crime That Shook the Banks. Part 1: The Genesis of the Perfect Crime. In the annals of criminal history, few stories have garnered as much mystery and intrigue as the case of the Untouchable Heist. It wasn't just about stolen money, it was about the audacity of an individual who, for years, slipped through the fingers of the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the world, leaving a trail of confusion, broken systems, and a question that has yet to be answered. Who was the mastermind behind the greatest heist in financial history? The mastermind of this audacious crime was not a typical thief. He wasn't the kind who entered banks with guns blazing, demanding cash from vaults. No, his crime was far more insidious and sophisticated. He operated from the shadows, using a different kind of weapon: knowledge. Knowledge of financial systems, digital security, and the loopholes in banking infrastructure. His name, if he had one, was unknown. His true identity, a mystery. This criminal, whom the world would later call the Ghost, was once an unremarkable person. It's believed that he started out as a financial analyst or a systems engineer working for various banks or cybersecurity firms. His understanding of digital finance and technology was unparalleled. But he was also patient. He bided his time, learning the ins and outs of the banking world. By the time the world would realize what had happened, he had already begun his silent assault on the global financial system. His plan wasn't to steal a single vault's worth of money. It was to rob the entire world, one small transaction at a time. Part 2: The Unseen Attack. The first signs of the heist were so subtle that no one took them seriously. A few irregular transactions were detected by minor banks in the outskirts of Europe and Asia. These banks, with limited security measures and resources, could not trace the origin of the breaches. But as these small incidents began to spread, it became clear that something much bigger was happening. The Ghost had begun his operation by targeting the weakest links, smaller, lesser-known banks that were often overlooked in the digital age. Through sophisticated hacking techniques, he wormed his way into these institutions' systems, masking his presence and stealing small amounts of money over time. A few $1,000s here, 100,000 there, small enough that no one would notice. The withdrawals were subtle, expertly hidden within routine transfers. The digital footprints he left behind were almost non-existent. Once confident that his methods were foolproof, the Ghost set his sights on larger prey, the world's major financial institutions. These were the banks that managed the vast majority of global wealth: Citibank, Bank of America, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, and countless others. They were seen as untouchable, secure beyond any hacker's wildest dreams. But the Ghost had a plan, and it was one that no one could have predicted. He infiltrated their systems the same way he had with the smaller banks, slowly and methodically. Using sophisticated software, he gained access to the very core of the financial networks. He didn't just hack a single account. He infiltrated the entire infrastructure. Like a ghost, he moved through the systems undetected, taking small amounts of money from thousands of accounts simultaneously. The stolen funds weren't large enough to trigger alarm bells, but they were enough to accumulate into vast sums. Over weeks and months, he drained billions from accounts around the world, his actions masked by encryption and multiple layers of security that were near impossible to penetrate. Part 3: The Great Unraveling. As the money vanished from global banks, the authorities were slow to react. Banks themselves were reluctant to acknowledge the scale of the theft, fearing a loss of customer confidence. It wasn't until the very first major financial crisis, triggered by the heist, a sudden and unexplained drop in the value of the dollar, that the full scale of the crime became apparent. The first real wake-up call came when a financial analyst at a major bank noticed something strange. The same pattern of withdrawal activity was occurring across different institutions. It was clear now that the theft wasn't an isolated event, but part of a global operation. By the time Interpol, the FBI, and various national law enforcement agencies launched their investigation, the thief had covered his tracks so well that even the most experienced investigators were baffled. Every time they thought they were getting closer to finding the source of the attacks, the evidence would disappear, vanishing into thin air like smoke. The funds had been moved into so many different accounts and shell companies, scattered across hundreds of countries and jurisdictions, that tracing them was impossible. The investigation grew increasingly complex. The ghost had encrypted his transactions so that no trace of the stolen money remained. He used advanced techniques like Bitcoin laundering, moving funds through decentralized networks that were virtually untraceable. Governments around the world began tightening security in response, but no one had an answer. The stolen money continued to circulate through the global financial system, and despite the best efforts of investigators, the mastermind remained a shadow. Part 4. The Web of Deception. As the heist continued, a network of deception was slowly revealed. It wasn't just a single person operating in isolation. There were hints of an underground network of hackers, money launderers, and rogue insiders working in concert with the ghost. Some believed that the ghost was actually a front for a larger organization, possibly even a state-backed operation designed to destabilize the world's financial markets. To make matters worse, certain high-profile individuals in the financial world were discovered to have been unwittingly aiding the ghost. They were duped into laundering stolen money through legitimate businesses or investments. These individuals were often highly respected, but their ignorance did little to protect them from the law. As more people got involved, the heist turned into something far more dangerous than anyone had initially realized. Some whispered that the ghost had become a symbol of defiance against the corrupt financial systems of the world. Others believed that the operation was designed to destabilize certain governments or economic regions. But the truth remained elusive. The more the authorities investigated, the more questions arose. Who was behind this global conspiracy? How many people were involved? And most importantly, how had the ghost managed to stay one step ahead for so long? Part 5. The Global Impact. As the investigation spiraled into complexity, the economic impact of the heist was being felt around the world. International stock markets began to fluctuate wildly. Nations feared that the theft could lead to an economic collapse. A wave of panic spread through both the financial sector and the general public. People began pulling their savings from banks, worried that their own funds might be the next to disappear. The ghost's actions exposed vulnerabilities in the banking system that many had never considered. Traditional security measures, passwords, encryption, and firewalls were no match for his technical expertise. The crime forced governments to rethink how they approached digital security. Billions of dollars were poured into strengthening cybersecurity, but experts knew it would take years to fully address the vulnerabilities that had been exploited. Meanwhile, the ghost remained a shadow, a name whispered in dark corners of the internet, but never fully understood. Some believed he had retired, content with the massive fortune he had amassed. Others suspected that he was planning something even bigger, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Part 6. Theories and Speculations. As the years passed, the mystery deepened. Many theories arose about the identity of the ghost. Some speculated that the criminal was a former banker or financial analyst with insider knowledge. Others believed he was an idealist who saw the banking system as inherently corrupt, and this was his way of striking back. Some even suggested that the ghost might be a collective, a group of hackers, each contributing their expertise to bring down the financial establishment. Others believed that he was part of a larger geopolitical agenda, attempting to destabilize certain governments or create economic chaos. But despite the many theories, no one had a definitive answer. The media dubbed the crime the heist of the century, but its true scale was still largely unknown. In time, even the most persistent investigators began to wonder whether the ghost would ever be caught, or if he even existed as a single person at all. Part 7. The Endless Pursuit. In the years that followed, the hunt for the ghost continued, though with diminishing intensity. He had become a legend, a ghost story told in hushed tones among cybersecurity experts and law enforcement officials. The money was gone, never to be fully recovered, and the mystery of the ghost's identity remained unsolved. But the story didn't end there. New advancements in digital currency, blockchain, and cybersecurity would eventually change the way the world viewed crime. And although the ghost's operation had been thwarted, the underlying question lingered: could it happen again? The world learned a valuable lesson from the heist. Trust in banks and financial institutions was never the same. People became more aware of the vulnerabilities of the digital age, where information could be stolen without a single person ever stepping foot inside a bank. But as for the ghost, his legend continues to haunt the world. A reminder that no system, no matter how secure, is truly impenetrable. This extended version adds depth to the plot, revealing more about the global consequences, the detective work, the complexity of the crime, and the ongoing speculation, creating a richer and more immersive narrative that would captivate viewers on YouTube.